here
Okay.
as basically as quickly as my internet will allow.
All right. Good
Which, I
evening.
mean,
Now streaming live on Facebook. All right.
mhm.
It should be in the.
All right. I think we're good to go. So, all right. Good evening, everybody. It's so great to be back with another Jazz Talk. I'm Jordan Van Hemert, and I am on the board of directors of the West Michigan Jazz Society. And today, we have a really special treat in that we are interviewing another member of the board of directors of the West Michigan Jazz Society. So, um, Kevin Jones is honestly, I don't like that. I don't like that this would be a moniker for you, but I feel like you're West Michigan's secret weapon. But the problem is, I don't want you to be a secret. Like I want everybody to like come and hang and like be like, all right, everybody get hip to Kevin. So this is Kevin Jones. He is one of the newest members of the West Michigan Jazz Society Board of Directors. He is a percussionist extraordinaire, and he's going to tell you and me all about his terrific career that has spanned, we'll just say, a few decades. I won't like age you or anything. We'll just say a few decades. Welcome, Kevin. Thanks so much for being here, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jordan. You can age me, man. I'm proud. I'm still standing at the age of 61. So I'm I'm really fortunate and blessed to be able to still be able to play music, to still be able to get up in the morning and breathe in air and breathe out and stand on two legs. So that's
That's right.
that's a blessing right there. And ever since I moved here, I moved here out of the New York, New Jersey area because I fell in love with Martine Dalton, who is the daughter of Merritt Mel Dalton,
Mm-hmm.
the legendary saxophone player who put down roots here in Grand Rapids
Mm-hmm.
back in 1958. Yeah, 1958. So anyway, so yeah, I'm blessed to be here. Thank you so much.
So, Kevin, you have had a career that spans so long in this business. And one of the things that I'm most excited about is that you come here bringing a wealth of experiences with you. And I mean, your resume speaks for itself. But the way that you came up through the art form also speaks for itself. So can you talk about, kind of growing up in your family environment and how you got into music?
Oh wow. Well, I don't want to make this a 3 hour jazz talk, so I'm going to try to keep this short. But um, I grew up. Not everyone in my family was a musician. Both of my parents weren't professional musicians, but my grandmother was. My grandmother was a pianist. She also played organ too, but she was a pianist, and she played with Bessie Smith. And she actually earned money. Her work was playing for the silent movies um, back at in the early part of the 1900s. My grandmother was from Mississippi originally and made her way up to St. Louis eventually, but in Kansas City, she lived in Kansas City for a while, but she earned money for her family and to survive by playing piano. So she was actually a professional musician, and in those days, being a professional musician, being a woman and being a professional musician it wasn't easy, especially in those times. My uncle also played organ. He played with Lionel Hampton. He was, you know, he wasn't the most proficient, technically proficient organist out there, but I mean, he was a groove master, you know, and I just used to watch him, you know, work the foot pedals and sit down there. But anyway, so it was in my family. My brother's a guitarist, a professional musician, and actually, I wanted to play piano growing up, but the piano teacher I had didn't really bring me material that sparked my interest. You know, I really didn't want to play Swans on the Lake. You know, you know, I wanted to play like, you know, James Brown and Sly Stone, and you know, but so to be able to keep up with my brother, who's a little older than me, I joined a band, and I wanted to join a band, his band. And so there was a pair of bongos and that we had at the house, you know, a cheap pair of bongos. So I went to rehearsal with these bongos, and they thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I would play those bongos, and until, like, you know, I like begged my parents to buy me a conga drum. But right before that, my brother had taken a trip. My oldest brother had taken a trip to Africa. I'm the youngest of 6. And he came back with a drum for me. This drum right here. Hang on one second. I still have it. This is my first drum. I still have this drum.
Wow. Beautiful.
You know, this is my first drum I ever had. And sorry, guys. but eventually I got a conga drum and started playing. But I lived in a environment. I grew up in Englewood, New Jersey. And so the environment where I grew up was, and the time where I grew up, it was filled with musicians. Like, everybody played music, it seemed like. There was 2 brothers that lived down the street from us, like maybe 3 or 4 houses down. Earl Buster Smith, who was the older brother, and Marvin Boogaloo Smith, his younger brother. And Buster Smith used to play with Eric Dolphy and Idris Suleiman and Oscar Denard. He played with Oscar Peterson, Boo Pleasant. You know, he was a real hard bop drummer, you know, bebop drummer. And his brother, who Marvin Boogaloo Smith, was just, you know, he's still around, and he's a tremendous, one of the greatest drummers I've ever seen. He does things on drums that it just amazes me to this day. But you know, around the corner from me, his Marvin's buddy, who taught me how to play congas, was Carl Potter, who played with the Isley Brothers. And up the street from him was the drummer Yogi Horton, who played with Bob James and you know, a lot of people. Around the corner from him, there was, you know, Sam Rivers lived around the corner too. Across the street from me, the Five Stair Steps, the vocal group, you know, Ubu Child.
Yep. Oh yeah.
They lived kitty corner to our house right across the street. And then we had the Isley Brothers that lived in our town. We had Dizzy Gillespie and Sarah Vaughan and Wilson Pickett. The Sugar Hill Records was in our town, you know. So we had like just wealth of music that was happening. And at that particular time, you know, this is before internet and Atari. It was pre-Atari. You know, there's no video games back there. So what do you do when you're a kid? You know, you either go to the park and play sports, you play with your friends, you get into mischief, whatever, you know. So instead of being in sports or getting into mischief, I chose to play music, and it panned out pretty good. So, one thing led to another. The teacher that taught me how to play conga drums, uh, 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 he played with the Isley Brothers. So I eventually played with the Isley Brothers after he left and became an expatriate. He moved to Italy. So, but the times were different. Times were really different. I got my first gig, the first gigs I remember having were at the Elks Club, and it was us as a band. We were like 13 years old, 12, 13 years old, and we were playing in the Elks Club, and these guys came in there and heard us, and they were working for Joe and Sylvia Robinson, who were they had a record label before Sugar Hill called All Platinum, and they had groups like the Moments. It was a soul music.
Yeah, yeah.
And eventually, at 13, they loved the way we sounded, and eventually we went on the road. At 13. I mean, opening up for acts like Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes and the Shy Lights, the Tops,
Wow.
Eddie Kendricks.
Wow.
We opened up for the Isley Brothers. We opened up for War. I mean, it was just, the who's who of the R&B business, or the souls. At that time, it was called soul. So,
Yeah.
when you're 13 and you're in that thing, it was like living a dream for us. Although we didn't get paid very much money, we got paid, but we were on tour, going up and down the East Coast, touring off of a record that was a #1 record on the soul charts at that particular time. So, I got to be around professional musicians. My first jazz recording was with Charles McPherson at the age of 18. Now, to back it up a little bit, I met Charles McPherson through his son, who was my best friend in high school. I think I was the only high school person in high school, only cat in high school that had a Charles Mingus record. Like that was like, I was into jazz. I was into jazz and R&B at the same time. Like I was listening a lot to jazz and Latin and soul. And so that kind of upbringing and being around that culture really, really was like a fertile ground for me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's much more than that happened in the years between 10 years old when I started playing and 18 when I recorded that record. I mean, there was so much that happened. So, but I can't fit it all in one time. But it was culture. It was it's a natural thing, as playing in the church, playing for in African drum ensembles when I was 15. There's another cat that taught me how to play. His name is Babatunde Lee, and he was the drummer with Leon Thomas. And so, he came from Englewood, and with him and Roger Glenn, the vibraphone, Tyree Glenn, right? You've heard of Tyree Glenn?
Yeah.
So Tyree Glenn lived in Englewood too. And his two sons played music, Tyree Glenn Jr. and Roger Glenn. And Roger was the vibraphonist with Mongo Santa Maria. And I had no idea. I had all these Mongo Santa Maria albums at home. I had no idea that Roger Glenn was from Englewood, but I saw his name on the record. And when my sister told me, my sister went to school with him, my friend, my teacher, my mentor, Babatunde Lee, he went to school with her. So, it was like one thing, it was a natural progression. It was one thing after another. Yeah. And the thing about it that I want to stress is that all this time, I was being taught in the oral tradition.
Yeah.
The oral tradition. Play this, man. You play this. I would do gigs I had an every Monday night gig in New York at a jazz club. And so that's where I played with Art Blakey Jr. That's where I met Art Blakey Jr. And him and I became friends, although he was 20 years older than me. But we were friends. We were cool. You know, I was like 15 years old and playing with Art Blakey Jr. I knew who Art Blakey was. So, you know, I was all excited. And so we
Yeah.
remained friends until unfortunately, he passed away before his father, you know. Yeah, I played with him. I played with his sister, Evelyn Blakey. You know, so there's a culture that I came up in. And for me, right now, what I'm trying to do in Grand Rapids is actually, I'm trying to replicate that culture. I'm trying to cultivate it, you know. So, but more
Yeah.
on that later. But
Yeah,
that's
yeah, that's
that's just the beginning.
yeah, I mean, what you're doing here is you gave people a really good like little preview. You showed people the table of contents of the book. And so we're gonna go there later for sure. So let's talk about your work with Charles McPherson. So for those who might not know, I feel like sometimes Charles kind of flies under the radar a little bit, even though like he really, I mean, everybody who should know who Charles McPherson is. Can you talk about your work? Talk about that record at age 18 years old, Kevin Jones recording with Charles McPherson. What does that look like? Take us there.
No, take us there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I got a phone call from Chuck, who had moved out of our house, or he was spending some time with his dad in San Diego. And he called me on the phone. He was like, "Yo, Kev, man, my father's doing a record, and he may want you to come out there and do so." You know, I got paid for the date, but Charles didn't pay me for the flight. You know, I flew out there. My mom flew me out there. You know, paid for my ticket, the plane ticket out there. But I got paid well for the recording. Um, I played on four songs, I think, on that record, which was on Xanadu. It was myself and Chuck McPherson, Charles Jr., and Monty Budwig, Lou Levy. Yeah, that was it. Lou Levy and Monty Budwig. For Don Schlitten, who was the producer, who worked for Xanadu, at that time, Xanadu Records. Now, that was my first jazz record date. And let's just say that I knew what I had to do after doing that record date. It wasn't easy. And
Yeah.
I don't feel it was like, oh, I was playing so much conga, you know. It was, man, I was bad. I knocked the record date out, man. It was difficult, you know. I wasn't happy with the way I played. But I'll tell you what my interaction with Charles was. When Charles McPherson would come to New York and play during that time, of course, his son is a year younger than me. So his son started living at my house. My mother became his guardian. So I refer to Chuck as my stepbrother, you know, because for 2 years we were, you know, he had his own room, and you know, he had in my house, you know, but he had basically, he wanted to stay there because he's a drummer. He plays traps.
Yeah.
And so he stayed there, and we spent every day together. We would leave school early, like we would cut the last class so we can get home early, and turn on A Night at Birdland with Art Blakey and Clifford Brown, and we would analyze bebop records, you know, or hard bop records, and like we would listen to the music and then go down and practice and play and stuff like that. But Charles a couple of times came, visited the house, you know, see his son, and my mom would put out a big dinner for him and stuff. And And of course, he would bring a saxophone, and he played with us a couple of times. And you know, we played and we were grooving. He called off a tune, and we had a tempo like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, like right here, you know.
Mhm.
And that was cool.
Yeah.
And we were playing. It's bad, you know.
Yeah,
And
it's good.
then he called, okay, Cherokee, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. After about 3 or 4 minutes, we started crumbling. You know, like we couldn't play that. We couldn't play those kind of tempos, you know. And you know, but we went kind of back and forth, and he played with the both of us, and he liked what we were doing because we were breaking up the rhythm a lot, and he likes that.
Yeah.
He doesn't like a drummer to be static. He doesn't want it. He firmly made it firm. Okay, you guys are playing too loud. Now you can't bash now. You gotta be more Leroy Williams than Elvin Jones, you know, on the volume tip, you know, because we were playing. I mean, we were kids, you know, teenagers. And we want to play, man, you know, like, and
without a doubt.
yeah. So through those interactions, I learned a lot. I feel like sometimes I play too loud still, but my understanding has definitely grown in the past 40 years of how to play. So, but that interaction was more family oriented.
Yeah.
But it really gave me an idea about what I needed to do. So fast forward, and we remained. They are both of them. Like I had conversations with both Chuck Charles Jr. and Charles Sr. yesterday. So we remain, you know, connected, you know, to this day. But the following year, I had the opportunity to play with Archie Shepp. And at the same time, Archie Shepp was sort of my mentor when I went to University of Massachusetts. So just to back up a little bit too, and this is something that I don't think that there's a lot of students out there, a lot of people don't realize that there weren't that in the 70s when I was in college, there weren't too many jazz programs out there. You had Berkeley School of Music. And of course, they didn't have, at that particular time, they didn't have a space or a program designed around African diaspora percussion, you know, hand drumming, conga, djembe, that kind of stuff like that. So you had to play drums, you know. So you had Berkeley, you had Livingston College at Rutgers campus had a program that had just started. And then I think Oberlin and maybe one other school had a jazz program, but there weren't that many jazz programs happening at that particular time. So if you wanted to be a music major, you had to study classical music. So all this time while I was like studying and doing apprenticeships basically in these bands in New York and playing R&B and playing in the church and doing all kinds of stuff like that. You know, I was trying to earn my money. I would save my money for private lessons. Like I took lessons from Charlie Persip. I took lessons on mallet keyboard from Charlie Simons, who was a teacher at Jazzmobile, where I also went to school. I did a lot of studying between the age of 15 and the time I left school. But at any rate, I took snare drum lessons from Richard Pratt, who was, you know, a symphonic player, but also played jazz. I took drum set lessons with Charlie Persip. And I started playing traps. I started playing drums back then. All this studying so I could get in school because I really wanted to be a music major. I really wanted music to be my life. So I decided since Archie Shepp was at University of Massachusetts, and Max Roach was at University of Massachusetts. I wanted to go to University of Massachusetts, right? So, I mean, Max Roach, you're talking about Max.
Right.
You're talking about Max Roach.
Right.
That's Max Roach, y'all.
Yeah,
I mean,
man.
you know,
Max Roach.
that's Max. You know, I mean, if if Art Blakey was the king, he was the prince. You know, like that.
Yeah,
Kind
that's
of,
right.
you know, he was. It was. That's jazz royalty right there. And
Yeah.
to be around that, that's what I wanted to be around. So my brother had just gotten his tenure. My oldest brother became a professor at UMass, and so I was able to do in-state residency and go to UMass. And so my time there was well worth it. Although when I auditioned for the music department, it was all classical music.
Mm.
And so I passed my snare drum exam. I passed my timpani exam. I got to the xylophone, I mean marimba. It was a piece I had prepared, and I played it perfectly, perfectly. And you know, that's saying I'm playing congas and African drums, and that's like my thing. But to go and to go outside of myself and to really make the effort to try to get in school, of course, as you know, when you audition, there's only a certain number of spots.
Right.
So this cat, the percussion teacher, I'll never forget this. Percussion teacher, okay, that was great. You know, that was wonderful. Now, I want you to read this. And he puts some sheet music in front of me, and it's completely atonal. Like it just looked like there was notes every place.
Yeah.
Accidentals, like here's some accidentals, just throw them up against the paper. You know, it's like it made no sense to me. And I got to about the fifth bar and I crumbled, you know. So
Yeah.
I didn't get in. And I became a music minor. But I did my independent study in Black music and theater under Archie Shepp and Max Roach. And through that relationship, I was able to be Max Roach's roadie for M Boom Repercussion, if anybody knows that. And then in my third year, Archie took me on the road, which was 1979. And so we went to I went to Paris with his Attica Blues big band. And I was, you know, in the band was Avery Sharp, Clifford Jarvis, Steve Toure, Eddie Preston, Malachi Thompson, Charles McGee, Eddie Preston, Charles McGee Greenlee, Marion Brown, Akua Dixon, Terry Janour. I mean, it was just like, it was a huge band with all the cats.
Yeah.
Patience Higgins was in the band, and Hakeem Jami was from Detroit. You know, he was in the band, and it was just like a potpourri of different cats. You know, it was like, you know, it was like really, but that really showed me, and that's that big band. You know, I'm really proud of the work I did with Archie on that, because you know, the time I did Charles's record to the time I did. You could hear the growth in my playing from the time I did Charles's record to the time I did Archie's record. And then right after that, I got off tour. It was November by that time, and I had kind of wasted the semester, so I had to kind of drop out. And then I got a call from the Isley Brothers saying that they're starting rehearsals at the end of January. And so I was like, you know, I made a decision that I was gonna play music, you know, as a profession. Yeah. And it went on from there. And the Isley Brothers had me working like a lot. I was working. We worked almost the whole year round. I mean, we'd take 3 months off.
And
then the whole thing would start over again. And those rehearsals for those tours, like tours would last 4 or 5 months, but the rehearsals lasted 2.5 months. And you talk about rehearsals that were 8, 9, 10 hour rehearsals, you know, of course breaks, whatever. But we rehearse every day. He was
Yeah.
playing every single day, every single day, every single day. There wasn't any, you know, it was all about music. And the thing I
Yeah.
loved about it was all I had to do was show up and play. My whole day was revolved around playing music and getting paid, playing the music and getting paid, you know. And, you know, being on the road then was much different than the way people say, yeah, we're going on the road and like on a tour, and it's like 3 weeks long, 2 weeks long. This was like 4 to 5 months long, you know, we were gone.
Yeah.
And there were no cell phones. There weren't even ATM machines back then. There was no, you know, when you left, you left. You were gone. You know, you would write letters or make, you know, spend your extra money to make a phone call home. And that went on for about 6 years until I joined Whitney Houston's band. And I still recorded, with the Isleys, even while I was touring with Whitney. And then I went back with the Isley Brothers up until about 1992. So, yeah, it's a long history, man. We could talk forever
Yeah.
about who I played with and stuff, you know. But
Well,
I was able
well,
to
there's
formulate, you know, my sound.
yeah. Well, there's a common thread in kind of your lineage of artists that you've worked with, and it's to me, it's artists who have really changed the landscape of what music is in this country. Look, I mean, you don't have to like if you say the name Whitney Houston. I mean, come on. If you don't know who Whitney Houston is, I mean, you're under a rock or something. Like there's no way to be ignorant of who she is because she completely changed the game. Completely defined what it meant, you know, to be a singer in you know in this day and age, and so there are still people, you know, who look to her and will always look to her talent, and her way of performing and singing. The Isley Brothers, same thing. You had, you know, people who really revolutionized the music. So, what was it like to be kind of a part of that? Like, tell me about like, I guess working with artists like that, who really, honestly, it's like you're a part of history.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting because I've known the Isley Brothers for a long time, you know, I wasn't close with them, but you know, there were 5 brothers, actually originally 6, but one of them died, but I didn't know Vernon. Vernon Isley he died he was a teenager when he was a teenager. So I only knew the 5 brothers and Chris Jasper, who was the brother-in-law of the Isley Brothers. And I had heard so many stories about when they first started out in the 50s, how when they went to England, how the Beatles and the Rolling Stones used to follow them around like little puppy dogs. I mean, literally
Yeah.
follow them around, ask them questions. What did you do this? How you do this? What do you do that? How, you know, how'd you do that? Do you do when you do, are you guys really doing choreography or are you just doing your own thing? What do you know, they ask questions, you know, they went to every show when they were when they first went to England. Those cats would come and learn from the Isley Brothers and Little Richard. And you know, and
Yeah.
Bo Diddley, and they learned from black musicians, and then they created their own thing and came over here, and it was like called the English invasion or the British invasion of music. You know, um, another former band member of the Isley Brothers is the one that changed music, Jimi Hendrix.
That's right.
Jimi Hendrix was guitar player with the Isley Brothers in the mid 60s. I think it was 64, 63 and 64, or 64 and 65. I can't remember. But anyway, it was during that period because Jimi Hendrix played with the Isley Brothers and King Curtis. Now, when you are in that, like, I didn't have like the same, like the awe, because it was kind of natural. Like, I didn't have like, I'm in awe of the Isley Brothers, like they were, we ate together, we did stuff together, we were all together all the time. And all of these little stories kind of pieced it together, and the funny thing, I'll tell you a story, a story that we were on the bus. We were going, I don't know, someplace from one city to another. After a while, they all started looking the same. So we were on the bus, and Ronald, the lead singer, Ronald, was up, and all the band came around. It's like, say, Ronald, hey man, the band want to know what was Jimi Hendrix really like when he played with the band. And he sat back in his chair, stroked his chin, took a drag off his Salem cigarette, blew out the smoke and said, you know what? He was kind of like Kevin. I'm like, he was kind of like, always liked to jam, and stuff like that, So it was, when he said that, I was like, I was the only one in the band that actually got a solo with the Isley Brothers, like every night. Like, yeah. I was the only one in the band. Like, nobody else got a chance to take a solo. It was just me and Ernie, the guitar player, that would get solos. Obviously Ernie got solos, but because he's one of the brothers. But anyway, but I got a little 16 bar or 32 bar solo at times, so it was definitely an experience, because not only did I tour with them, I recorded with them lots of different records, and other projects that they produced. So I'll get off the road, and then a couple of weeks later, we'd be in the studio recording albums, recording music for the Isley Brothers, for other people, and I was their cat. I was their go-to percussionist. They really loved the way I played. And, and when they split up at one point in '84, they recorded another album. They were like, oh no, we got to have Kevin. Kevin got to come in here, play a solo on such and such song, do such, whatever, and I was really, I really got to see the creative process in the studio. I got to see it all. I got to see work with masters, Working with Whitney was a bit different, because Whitney was surrounded by a lot of people that kept a barrier around her, kind of. We were cool, Yeah. She was like, she always loved to be like with the band, like she loved that. She loved like hanging out with the band and joking and fooling around and stuff. And but there was a limit to that, And when we were on tour, they had the girls' bus and the boys' bus, So there wasn't really, she, because of her superstardom, the way she blew up, there was a lot, like we would roll into a town and she would have to take off and go do the Tonight Show or some other thing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Stuff like that. So she didn't really, and we were, had a day or two off, she would go out and do something else, you know, so,
Mm.
but she loved to be with the band, and she was just in her, she was so powerful. Her voice was so powerful. I mean, if you stood in a room, she'd hurt your ears, man. I mean, not in a
Yeah,
bad
well,
way,
yeah,
you know, like you could feel her, like you could feel the vibration from her voice inside of your body.
yeah,
That's how, you know, and so when you work with people of that caliber, you tend to try to emulate that. You try to emulate their work ethic, their professionalism. You try to emulate um, their 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 push and their sort of, you know, their commitment to the music and to their careers. You know, so um, I try to carry that a little bit forward. You know.
Yeah. Well, you know, as we said before, these jazz talks are a product of the West Michigan Jazz Society, and they are kind of the Jazz Society trying to give something to the community, to the membership, to get really inside the music. And I just have to give credit where credit is due. This is your idea, you know, to have jazz talks like this, and so um, it's really cool to hear, you know, where you're coming from as somebody who said, hey, we should have jazz talks. So the West Michigan Jazz Society does a lot of things for its members, and I believe you can find a link somewhere in the chat that if you would like to become a member, they got more information for you. But Kevin, you've already brought this one initiative to the Jazz Society, being on the board for a few months.
I think,
What
sure.
what is something what is something that you are, you know, you mentioned earlier that you want to make Grand Rapids a similar scene to what you grew up experiencing in New York and New Jersey. What are some ways that you believe that we can kind of live into that and work on that in our own scene here in Grand Rapids?
Um, wow, it's going to take it's going to take effort from everybody. Um, First of all, we have to stop insulating ourselves. You know, we have a sort of an insular community. You know, what I see is there's a lot of communities that are kind of closed off. You know, certain groups of people only hang with certain groups of people.
Yeah.
Certain groups of people only play with certain people. Certain groups
Yep.
of people only get called by certain other people.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's one aspect, but I think the aspect of education is really important. I think presenting jazz to children, to really promote, because part of the West Michigan Jazz Society, our goal is to promote the culture of promote jazz. That's what it says. But I want to promote the culture of jazz, because jazz is not just a series of notes. It's not just a series of chord progressions. It's not just, you know, a guy playing the drums and playing ding, 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 ding. It's more than that.
Yeah.
It's more than that. It's just not being able to play, you know, I don't know, Donna Lee, or, you know, playing a standard. It's more than that. It's more than background music. And what frustrates me here is that there is a kind of a culture that has grown into this thing where we play gigs, but we're like the background music, you know. Nothing against it. I'm glad to have those gigs because the money comes in
Right.
handy. I'm glad to be able to sit behind a set of drums again, you know, because I started playing traps like again, so I can make some, but you know, so I won't be out of a gig, so I can actually have a gig. But more so than that, I think that we have to really let our guard down,
Hmm.
let our, open ourselves, jazz, the history of jazz has been open. It's never been closed off. Like, no, you can't come in here because you're not really a jazz guy, or you're not really, no, man, it's open to everybody. Jazz was born out of the struggle of Black people, but it's the truest form of democracy that we have. Jimmy Heath told me that.
Yes. Amen.
The truest form of democracy that we have, because everybody gets a say. Everybody
That's right.
gets a say. Now, if you don't let somebody in to that part of democracy, that means that they don't have a say. You can't freeze people out. You have to welcome everybody, because even the listeners are a part of the thing. Even the listeners. So what I'm saying is that we have to diversify. We have to be open-minded to the music. It may not be the music that you love. Like, for instance, let's just be real here. I'm not really a smooth jazz guy. Like, that's not my thing. My music is nothing, ain't really smooth at all. It's rough and tumble. It's fighting in the bushes kind of music, like,
Yeah.
it's like, let's get naked music, it's like,
Yeah. Love.
it's rough and tumble. It ain't perfect. I think that our friend John Gist was playing in the band. He said it's organized chaos, but it is, and I like that. It's organized chaos.
Yeah.
Because that's what the world is. The world is chaotic. Life is chaotic. Everything is. But I'm saying that to say that although like smooth jazz is like, it's not like my favorite type of, but smooth jazz, it was Grover Washington started the leader of like that kind of movement.
Yeah.
And then before they actually called it smooth jazz. So
Right.
you can play Grover for me any day. You can play Bob James and and stuff, and like they, Earl Clue, George Benson, and what they were putting out back in the late 70s and stuff, man, that was, that's it. But I like stuff that's a little bit more interesting, but to me, like, like a groove is important. And, people like groove music too. So, we need to be able to be open. So I wouldn't mind seeing like, the West Michigan Jazz, like for us as on board of directors, for us to produce concerts that, are more along the lines of Art Ensemble of Chicago. But then the next time we have somebody, it's a smooth jazz thing. The next time we have somebody, it's, organ trio. The next thing we have is some Dixieland, some New Orleans, New Orleans jazz, brass band jazz, so.
So, I think what you said here about jazz being the truest form of democracy, that is a truly beautiful, thing. And I've heard Jimmy say that too, God rest his soul. But the biggest thing for me, is if you start freezing people out and say, no, this isn't jazz. No, this isn't jazz. Well, that's not democracy. That's voter suppression. That's like you're taking people's voices away at that point.
Yeah.
And I think something that I've noticed about, because we've worked together a few times, you know, not nearly enough for my liking because I'm always down to get some organized chaos in my life. But when I work with you, I noticed that the way that you approach the music has a lot of depth. And when I work with you and when we've been in rehearsal together, you know, we are always really pushing for this like almost like a higher plane of like existence. It's like a really spiritual thing. Like it's this thing where it's like it requires all of you. And so it's really interesting when I think about, you know, if okay, again, background music gigs are cool. Like they're cool. You know, money is good. But when you have the opportunity to be on this higher plane of existence and to embrace the spirituality of the music, and so you're saying like West Michigan Jazz Society, we produce a lot of shows where the music is front and center. And I guess to see people, to me, what feeds me and feeds my spirit when I go to these gigs is to hear somebody who is playing with their whole being.
Right.
Like somebody I think of when I think of this is Ivan Akansima. Every time I hear Ivan, I mean, I hear all of Ivan. You know what I mean? Like, and I just think that if your definition of jazz is limited to something that's like, oh, you guys, you know, you got to play softer. This is like cocktail hour music. Yeah. You know, then it's almost blasphemous in light of the culture of the music. So when you say you want to talk about the culture of the music, what I hear you saying is that you growing up with all of these great artists like right around the corner, you know, and like hanging out with the Isley Brothers and hanging out with, like you said, Sam Rivers was around the corner and whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like the you know, you lived and continue to live the music.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, how do we show people like Sam Rivers does not live around the corner from your average, you know, young musician? How do we show students how to live into the music like that? How do we show young people?
Well, first of all, let me say this. Jazz, as well as all the music that came out of the African diaspora, is sacred music.
Absolutely.
I'll say it again. Jazz and all of the music that came out of the we're part of the African diaspora, actually, that came out of the root, which is Africa, is sacred music. In Africa, they had music for every occasion. They had music for harvest. They had music when a baby was born. But it's not only music, it's music and dance, and or music and storytelling, along with, you know, everybody thinks of the instruments that we play, you know, as, you know, these are European instruments. No. The guitar and the banjo, they came from Africa.
Yes.
The trumpet is originally from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
The horn that you blow into, seashells like Steve Turre plays.
Yeah.
Those are African instruments. So you take the root of that music, and it shows up in the New World, in Cuba, in Brazil, in Venezuela, in Puerto Rico, in New Orleans, and on all the way up to Mississippi, and spread all over this country. Jazz is always, by what I mean, is born out of the Black experience of, you know, the experience of Black Americans. Mm-hmm. And the suffering of Black Americans, because we the people in the New World, we are the ones that experience the middle passage. So there's a
Yeah.
little bit more of a sense of spirituality and connection to the music in terms of why it was created, how it was created. But let me say this. In order to, jazz is also imperfect. It's not a perfection thing. Musicians, we have to get out of the perfection thing. Although it's okay you have to constantly, consistently work on your craft. When I was young, I practiced 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day. And then, you go to rehearsal and rehearsal is 8 or 9 hours, it's all day with the instrument. And so you will learn something, you will get better, you will become more masterful of your instrument. But when you start consolidating all of those experiences, it really does us no favors by limiting us to playing, some really meek, mild version of blue bossa.
Yeah.
Now, blue bossa is a hell of a song now.
It is. It is.
It's a badass song.
It really
But
is.
if you want to play blue bossa, play it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Play that shit. Excuse my friend.
Yeah.
If you, or come up with an arrangement for blue bossa where it's, play it in 6.
Yeah.
Or do something different. But what happens is there's not enough space for us. So we have to create spaces for our musicians. It can't be once a month. It can't be once a week. We need spaces in this area to be able to, there's a ton of musicians. There's musicians. I mean, we started naming musicians for when we got together to discuss about the jazz talk.
Yes.
We started to name musicians, and all of a sudden the list got like a whole page long. And that was Grand Rapids. We didn't even get to Kalamazoo and the landscape, or Detroit, or Muskegon, or you know what I mean? So, we need spaces to be able to express ourselves. So, but when we do get in spaces, it takes courage to be able to be on the edge and to render your soul to the audience. It takes courage. You can't just how can I say, it takes courage to be able to step beyond your capabilities or your beyond the box, let's say. It takes courage to do that. You can't just phone it in. You're disrespecting the music and disrespecting everybody that came before us when you don't take the risk, when you don't put your foot out on that ledge.
Yeah.
And sometimes, hey, if you step off the ledge and you fall, the beautiful thing about the music is that you have other people to catch you.
That's right.
I got you.
Right. Yeah.
Music is this music has never been about stellar perfection.
No.
Sometimes I listen to some music, some jazz, and they're playing all the notes right. And they're just, they all played all the hits and everything.
Yeah.
And it didn't make me feel anything.
Yeah.
I don't feel anything.
Yeah.
The thing is that what we have to do is we have to put a bigger value. What do we value in this society?
Yeah.
What do we value? Watching reality shows and having music, because they have music on the reality shows now. They like like some kind of drum machine with the, a synth thing. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
oh yeah, they're going over to so and so, and they're gonna have a big argument. Like,
yeah,
people put value on different things in this life. We have to put value on creativity, value on producing art. We have to put value on what we hold dear, because that's what makes us human.
hmm
That's what makes us human. So
yeah,
I'm hoping that, like you, I'm hoping that, we both are giving up our time, our precious time, to become board members of the West Michigan Jazz Society, because we want to see changes. We want to see, you know, a more diverse, diverse presentations of music. We want to really encourage and see jazz grow. Grand Rapids is the second largest city in Michigan, and we don't have a jazz club. I mean, we do now, though.
not yet. Yeah, we do soon.
We do now.
Yeah, that's right.
Now it's getting ready to open. It's getting ready to happen, man.
I'm ready for it.
So I'm gonna put a plug in, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Plug away.
So there's a young couple. I'm gonna call them young because they're younger than me. Named the Brighams, and they just they are opening up a new jazz club called GR Noir Wine and Jazz. They were due to open this month, but because of the COVID restrictions happening, we're not able to have inside dining or people gathering in one spot. But they are open for retail, so they're selling wine, and I really want people to go and support these entrepreneurs. Please support them, and support West Michigan Jazz Society too. Don't get me wrong, but please, jazz needs your support. Jazz needs support because it's not popular music. So, but excuse me. GR Noir, so everybody can go to grnoir.com. I'll be curating and helping them book acts in the future when they are able to open up for patrons to come in. But they are selling wines and I believe food retail. I got to get clear on that, but definitely they're selling wine. I'm going to go myself and buy a couple of bottles of wine as gifts for the holidays for some people.
That's right. Perfect timing. Perfect timing.
Yeah, and their website is grnoir.com. If you could support this new business in town, they're taking a big risk, a big leap of faith to open up a jazz club, exclusive jazz club, meaning that they're doing the whole thing from smooth jazz and neo souls kind of vibes to straight ahead to singer songwriter to even spoken word, trios. Right now they're just doing, well, the idea was to do trios first because of COVID, and then start bringing in singers and horn players and stuff like that. And so we're I'll be curating. If any of the musicians are out there that are interested in playing, you can go to email me at jazz@grnoir.com. That's for booking. But any info, you can just go info@grnoir.com. Also, please consider donating to the West Michigan Jazz Society, because we're trying to change things here in town to really open this up, because jazz is about being open. Jazz is about everybody. It's the Black experience, grew out the Black experience, but it's for everybody. It's a democracy.
Yeah.
I was in one band. We had the bass player was from Senegal. We had a cat that played harmonica. He was from France. We had one time we had an Irish guitar player. The other guitar player was from Grenada. Like we have just like there is so many. There's music goes beyond boundaries, and we should really show that in our area because
Yeah.
we're trying to really become a multicultural city, and we should do that. So
Yeah.
I done made my plugs now. So
Yeah, that's right. And GR Noir is gonna really, I think, be one of those venues that will promote the music, being at that deep level. The way it strikes me is they're not talking about, your cocktail hour background music. They're talking about let's come and let's hear the music. If you're gonna play blue bossa, play it in six. Play it with a vibe. Like really get it going. And so I think that this is a business worth supporting.
yeah,
In Grand Rapids. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Kevin.
they have backline too.
And they're gonna have backline.
Yeah,
Come on,
they're
people.
gonna have
What more do you want?
a baby grand Kawhi, but it's electric, but still. And they have a drum set, nice drum set, and it's really beautiful in there. They have commissioned 3 gigantic mural size paintings. One is of Billie Holiday, another one is of John Coltrane, another one of Miles Davis. And they're maybe 8 feet tall, maybe 7, 8 feet tall.
Wow.
And that's going to go behind the bandstand. So even soon
Wow.
you walk in the place, you're going to get the vibe. The vibe is going to be there.
Oh, beautiful.
And it'll be great to, anyway, please support them whatever way you can and support the Jazz Society, West Michigan Jazz Society. I think there's a link where you can.
There's a link in there somewhere. There's a link in the chat.
Somebody's gonna put up a link.
That's right. So, okay. So I'm hoping we'll have time for a few questions. People, if you have questions and you're out there listening and you want to, ask Kevin some questions, feel free to put the questions in the chat. We'll answer those. One that we got a long time ago came from Valerie. Now, this is going to be a tough one because she asked you if there was a favorite venue or a concert that you played. Good luck.
Oh, man. Valerie, let me see. Oh, man. There's so many. But sometimes the smallest ones are my favorite ones. There was a club in New Jersey, in Montclair, New Jersey, called Trumpets, where my band used to play all the time. And my band, 10th World. And our first gig was at that club, but we used to play that club. And we used to pack that club every single time. I mean, they would have to call in like extra servers to make sure that they were, So that's one of them. I remember playing with Bernard Harper out in California, and I can't remember the name of the club, but we played this club. It was actually a coffee shop. It was a coffee house, where they had poetry and stuff, kind of like GR Noir, except they served coffee. And we played that club. Jed Patton was playing piano. I'll never forget that. And Amin Salim was the bass player. Patrick Rickman was trumpet player. Brian Horton. Man, we played that club, man. It was like we played a 2-hour and 15-minute set. That's how intense. The first song was a half an hour long. We were in LA. I mean, there's so many different, it's hard to say. There's concerts where it was really great that I played. I mean, I don't know. It's that's a real tough one. I would
Yeah.
have to say that trumpets, playing with my band at trumpets, you know, and having a packed house, and yeah, I don't know. I think that that's it.
Speaking of your band,
Uh-huh.
10th World. So what's on the horizon for 10th World? What's
Okay.
on the horizon for the band?
Um, well, I'm getting ready to put out a CD of a live, a compilation of, we did a week at the Dirty Dog in Detroit last year.
Hmm.
And it was like 4 days. So we're going to take like the best of those, and we're putting out a CD called 10th World Live at the Dirty Dog. We're also planning, we're in the works for planning a new recording, which is going to involve Ivan, Kelvin
Beautiful.
Sholard, Damon Warmack, Nate, and some, you know, and we
Alan?
will,
Is Alan going to be on that one?
and you know, so we're going to pull different people for different situations on different tunes. Some of it's going to be quartet, some of it's going to be trio, some of it's going to be septet, like 7 pieces.
Oh, beautiful.
You know, so we're just like kind of working that out now. We have like everybody's going to be contributing music. All band members are going to be contributing music to that. We kind of, unfortunately, we had to I kind of slowed down on trying to plan out a recording because, you know, our bass player, Damon, who is the original bass player from 20 years ago in our band, you know, he had an unfortunate tragedy to happen in his family. You know, his wife died over the summer,
Oh,
passed away, and I don't want all the bass players. I love y'all, but Damon is the cat. You know,
yeah. Well, when you have a history like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in the band, and so I kind of wanted to take a step back because
Yeah.
she was, his wife was really part of the band. You know, she was part of the band. She would bring the kids. Like every gig we did last summer, she'd bring the kids, and the kids would be up there dancing. And I call them the Warmack dancers. You know, like
Yeah.
you know, so you know, our band is more like a family because we've changed band members, but they still remain to be in our family. You know, like
Yeah.
you're still part of the group, man. You know, like you're you know, I look at it as a collective. And you know, I really yeah, so we're gonna slowly get back to planning and organizing material and composing and stuff like that. So
Great.
you know, after I think after January, after the holidays, we're gonna probably get back on that path. But we're in the meantime, I'm gonna put this live album out in the meantime.
Great.
Excuse me.
Lots of good things on the horizon. That's great.
Yeah.
So we got a question up in here from Martine. She
Uh-oh.
asked if you had a choice of a legendary jazz musician to play with, who would it be?
Her father.
Good choice.
I actually, you know, I never got to meet Mel Dalton, but I feel like I feel his spirit in this house.
Mm.
His pictures all over the place. So, you know, it's like, you know, I sometimes I'll be practicing and it's almost like I can hear him playing with me. You know,
Yeah.
it's a weird thing. It's a connection that I have to him. We're both cancers and we both have so much in common. We're actually the same size. There's a few of his duds laying around here that I've actually worn to some of the gigs, like his tie. He had a tie that I wear a lot of times just to honor him.
Yeah.
And I really feel like I really missed him, you know, because I think we would have gotten in trouble, like Martine's mom and Martine would have been like trying to get us, had to pull us apart, you know, because we'd be down,
Yeah.
we'd be down in the basement playing together all the time. Like, yeah, man,
Yeah.
don't y'all know it's 11 o'clock? You know, y'all got to stop. You know, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of people that I really wanted to play with. I did get a chance to play with Art Blakey. I did get a chance to play with Max Roach. Not in their bands, but you know, when I did that tour with Archie, you know, I I turned around. We were playing there was a calypso number we played, and I can't remember the name of the tune, but I started it out, you know, and I was playing, and it was just like me and the bass player. We had like the groove going, you know, we playing this calypso. I started with the bass player, and we played this calypso groove. We set it up for the rest of the band, and then, you know, and usually at some point the drummer would come in, Clifford Jarvis would come in, and he would play something. And I was just like, man, where's Clifford? And I'm looking at the conductor, you know, I'm looking at Ray Copeland was the conductor. He was conducting the band. And the next thing I know, I heard, bastard. I looked over, it's Art Blakey, and I was like, it's Art Blakey. Remember the story I told you about skipping school to listen to Art Blakey, and he was one of the first, like, you know, like, that's like, it's Art Blakey, he's playing with me, you know. So some kind of way my drums called him to come and sit in, and he took Clifford off the drums and he sat down and played. That was an experience of a lifetime for me. So
yeah,
you know, that was cool.
That's incredible. Well, and I think, you know, all anybody needs to back to the, you know, the topic of Mel, all anybody needs to do, I think personally. Now, I'm a saxophone player, so maybe this is a little bit different for me, but all you need to do is hear that sound.
That's right.
You can hear that sound, and you hear something special, something really, really unique, something, you know, that vibrates, you know, your soul, your inner being. And for me, I think that was the perfect choice. Cause I mean, just
he's like, you know, I mean, I consider him my father-in-law.
yeah.
You know, I mean, I consider him my father-in-law. So, you know, I mean, that he would have to be first. Of course, you know, all of the greats and stuff. You know,
of course.
I mean, you can't play with everybody. I mean,
Right.
I wish John Coltrane had lived longer, but you know, the music of John Coltrane really, really gave me a sense of deep reflection and spirituality.
Yeah.
That this music is beyond just like, you know, cutting cats and playing, and you know, like, it's beyond technical prowess. You need technique to get to a certain place. You know, you have to practice your technique. Okay. But John Coltrane's music transcends that.
That's right.
It transcends our worldly being, you know, and it brings me to a higher place. And it has healed me. It has healed me at different times. I had to have brain surgery about 7 years ago. And the only thing I listened to was not the only thing, but the one record that stayed that I could listen to during that period was John Coltrane's ballads.
Oh yeah. Yeah, man. That's a record.
And to this day, and it's interesting because we just finished talking about Mel, and we're talking about Train, but Mel still had some CDs that he left with Martine. And I've been in the car for the last year running that ballads album.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not even a half an hour long, about a half an hour long or so. But that album, it stays on the playlist, man.
Without a doubt.
It's just
without a doubt.
because it's, yeah, it's just because it's something deep inside, because he went through the spiritual transformation just as I have,
Yeah. Yeah.
I John Coltrane has been a part of our lives since 1965, because my cousin, I could talk for like 3 hours, man. My cousin was a jazz fanatic. He was a jazz fanatic, and he used to live with us in Jersey. But he used to leave the house in Jersey, not come back for 2 or 3 days, because he was hanging out with all the cats over in New York, And but he, I remember him the day of John Coltrane. He went to John Coltrane's funeral in July of 1967. 67. And when he came home, he put on a Love Supreme, and he picked me up and spun me around the room while Love Supreme was playing. So, this music I've been around since I was a child.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, my dad and mom had like collections of, music and stuff like that. But, we also had these like other records there, like Lee Morgan and John Coltrane, and heard that music, it's important please, if you have kids, if you have grandkids, play John Coltrane for them, play Charlie Parker, play the music, play Don Cherry for them, play, the Art Ensemble of Chicago, Lester Bowie, man, play all the music for them. Teach them that because this music is sacred. This music is sacred. When you get to know the people that play this music and be around this music like I have, you really realize that it's not just about, for a drummer going, right, left, and, independence and such chords. It's more than that. It goes deep. It goes deep, and it's part of our being. It's our vibration. Anyway, I'm going on and on and on, bro. There's so much to talk about.
This is great. I think personally, like for me, even, from one human being to another, it is great to be learning from you, and to be, around, even though we're like virtual, right, or whatever. But like it's great to be like around, because we can never be reminded too many times of how spiritual and meaningful this music is. That's a thing that you can never hear enough. It's a thing that you can, and being around you, hearing, I can almost see images of like, the descriptions of the events that you're saying, so it has absolutely been a pleasure, talking to you about all this stuff. We had Nate up in the chat, who was saying earlier, he said, okay, 3 hours. All right. Sounds good, Kevin. Let's go. Yeah. Nate Bilton.
Yeah. 3 hours. Okay.
Yeah. So Nate was cool with it. So I'm sure that means it's fine. So, anyway, Kevin, thank you again so much. And I know that Michelle put in there that she really appreciates the contributions you're making to the board of directors. We'll be back next week actually we won't. Never mind. Right. We'll be back in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks with another great jazz talk for you all. Thanks again. I'm Jordan Van Hemert. This is Kevin Jones. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you.
All right.
Cool.